I'd like to go back and just add a few things about Peah and maybe go over to Shikha and Ulus. The first point, we developed the concept that the Rambam has a whole new interpretation of Lav HaNitil Aseh, and that Lav HaNitil Aseh is a reason to count. It means Lav HaNitil Aseh, that there's a relationship between a Lav and an Aseh. And every time you have Lav HaNitil Aseh, there must be also an Aseh. And not only an Aseh which might apply to many different lavim, but a peculiar Aseh for this peculiar lav. Therefore, the Ram says, since the lav of Peah, of Kutzcha Miskiatzcha, Loischala Pasotcha, Bekutzrecha, and it says Tazev, and it says the lav HaNitil Aseh, so Tazev must be a singular Aseh relating to Peah. And since Leket is Lav HaNitil Aseh, so therefore also there's a peculiar Aseh for Leket. The same thing for Peret, and the same thing for Oilers. Okay. So I was just wanted to go through and think about one or two lavim. The Ram says in Aseh Kuf Sari Dalet, I guess in Mitzvah Shem, I hope they will maybe say more about it when we get there, but just to understand the issue here, the Ram says there's a mitzvah of Hashavas Gezela in Kuf Sari Dalet, and he says, He shetzivonu lohoshiv es hagzelo bi'atzmo im hi nisheres ba'atzmo be'en v'tesefes chomesh oy lo seis domeho im nishtanish vom yis'ale veish b'zeh l'shegos. Okay. Ukvar be'aru b'meseches makos shelav degezel hu lav shenitek laseh v'omer rachmona lo sigzo v'omroi rachmona omer lo sigzo v'eish v'zeh l'shegozo. So it means that since they said that lav HaNitil Aseh v'heishiv es hagzela and v'heishiv is the Aseh, v'heishiv is nitel from the lav. So therefore we know that v'heishiv is an Aseh for Gzela. And it's a lav HaNitil Aseh, but it's in the nitek is not important. For nitek is only important that we should know there's an Aseh of v'heishiv. That's what he says. L'cheira, what you would have said, and what do you need this for? Because if you look at the parsha of Ashem Gzelos, you could interpret V'hoy ki yesham. You could have interpreted V'heishav Gzelos shegozal is a sipur dvorim, and it's a t'nai that if he's mentioned the Gzela, then he has a kapora of chomesh and also of Asham Gzelos. But V'heishav Gzela shegozal is a t'nai, sine qua non, for the mitzvah for Tesefes chomesh and for the Osham. However, what you see in the Gemara Makis is V'heishav Gzela shegozal is not a sipur dvorim, but it's a Mitzvas Aseh. It's interesting, with people who learn all Mitzvah, whatever it is, if you'd ask them where it says V'heishav in the Torah, and that they point out to the parsha of Ashem Gzelos, I'm not sure if that would happen. I would hope so. I'm not sure. Now, since it says Veheshiv es gzela asher gozal v'esha oshok asher oshak, so one would have said that the lav of leisashik is also nitik lasei if you're going to interpret that the same way that you interpret the gzela is shaykh to the parsha, the lav of gzela is shaykh to the parsha of Oshem Toli. So you'd have said maybe the lav of leisashik is shaykh to the parsha of Oshem Toli. And the Ram is very clear that it is shaykh, because the Ram says in Lois Aseh Mem Zayin, he she's hilnu mehasik l'mashe etzleinu, that's leisashik, to hold something back from giving it back, be'en she's chayavnu boy ushelo la'akev oisai v'lo nasneu to give it back to its rightful owner. V'amu yis'aleh leisashik. So here, now next is important. Esreacha v'oiva al oishek dino v'din gazlan b'shova omer yis'aleh v'chichesh ba'misai b'fikodem b'sumas yad oy begezel oy oshak es ha'misai. So the whole v'chichesh is referring to someone who violated the law of leisashik. And then it continues, because the pasuk says, "V'chichesh oy motza aveda v'chichesh bo v'nishba al shoker al achas mikol eile asher yaseh odom lachtoi boheino v'hoy kiyechte v'yoshom v'heshav as a gazela asher gozo." There he has conscious pangs that he wants to do tshuva. So Pasha tells us what he should do, but it's a sipur dvarim. But we know that Veheshiv is the HaMitzvah. Veheshiv is a gzela as a gzela gozo, or as a oshak asher oshak, or as a pikodon asher hofkad, or as a aveda asher motza. So the same way that we said by Peah, that the Gemara Makis says is a lav nitul aseh, and it says tazeh v'osom, and we say the same way osom refers to Peah, it refers to leket, oilos, and peret. So why do we say the same thing? That the same way we say the Heshiv Azazeh Gozel is an aseh. And it means that what? That Gezel is a lav anitil aseh, say Oshok is Oshek, also is a lav anitil aseh, and there should be an aseh to return the Oshek. And since we said that lav anitil aseh, even though it says as a general command, which applies to many things specifically, like tazev oisam, it applies to pay specifically, and leket, and peret, and oilos, we should say the same thing. To be separate aseh by gzela, or as a oshak asher oshak. And it should be lav hanitik laseh and a separate aseh in the minyan. And so what's the difference? So this l'cheira is a problem, is bothering me, because the Ram says explicitly that l'cheira, that leisashek and Osham Tola go hand in hand. So I was wondering, not sure, one possibility, two possibilities. When you say ta'azev oisam, l'cheira oisam clearly is an indefinite pronoun reference and refers to all of them. The question is, does it refer to all of them specifically or all of them generally? So once we know from Peah that it refers to Peah specifically, so the assumption is it should refer to all of them specifically, and therefore you have an assay of Peah, an assay of Leket, an assay of Peret, and assay of Olois. However, what exactly happens over here in Lava Nitel Assay and say the Gzela is an Assay? Because you can't have a case of Lava Nitel Assay without Mitzvah Aseh in the minion. So I would have said that the Pshuto Shel Mikra is still maintained, that the Torah is telling you a story. But even though the Pshuto Shel Mikra is maintained, but the Kabbalah of that there's a nitak on Gzela, so the Pirush Makubal says both are Kayim, that Veheshiv es Gzela is both a Sipur Dvorim and it's also a commandment, which a priori is amazing that you can have such a thing. But let's assume that it's possible. So the question is then, is there anything in the fact that the Torah says, that Chazal said that Gzela is a lava nitel aseh because of Veheshiv, that the Veheshiv of Oshek is also lava nitel aseh? So I would say maybe not. That since the pasuk Pshutai is, you're learning the pasuk, the Pirush Makubal is not Oike Pshuta Shel Mikra, but it's it coexists. It's coexistent. So the Veheshiv means a Sipur Dvorim and also command. But all we know that it means a command only by Gzela. There's no raya that it means a command by anything else. So maybe there's no raya. There should be lava di glase, and therefore the Ram doesn't count a separate asay by Oshek. Or I can ask you something else. I'm not sure if this is the answer, because the pasuk is very strange. The pasuk says, "Ve'esha gzela shegozo," which refers to the lava of gzela. O esa oshok asher oshak. L'chayr, that would be a lava nitel asay, and that would be an asay. But the question is, O esa pikodin asher hofgad ito. So, isn't that also violate Sashik, that he's holding back from giving the pikodin? So, what does it mean? There's a separate asay. You don't know how to interpret it. There's a separate asay by Oshek, which he had a halvor or something, and there's a separate asay by pikodin. But that has nothing to do with lav and asay, because there's only one lav of Oshek. So the pasuk itself says it should not be interpreted as a lav and asay, because there should be two different asays and one lav, which is counterintuitive, is not counterintuitive. it's antithetical to the lav of Nitla Aseh, because the lav needs its own aseh, and this is not what's happening over here. And certainly lav and Nitla Aseh couldn't generate two separate asehs, because by Tmura, then we say it's not lav and Nitla Aseh because the two asehs. So the pasuk says you shouldn't interpret as lav Nitla Aseh. So I would say that's the answer. Now, I want to say something else. We were discussing last week that the definition of lav Nitla Aseh means you can only imagine the aseh after averis halav. That means the only time is an aseh of tazev after you violate the lav of you can only violate the lav of leket, of the aseh of leket, if loy salaket, you violate the lav of leket. Similarly in peret and similarly in oilos. You can't. There's no thing. Let's be kind the aseh. The same way let's say be kind the aseh. Vashavas gzela. No one would say you should steal in order to be kind the aseh of gzela, and this is only if you violate the lav. Now I just want to have a flashback and then show the interesting thing that we discussed, which we were probably not aware of. We learned Pei Gimel. Look at Mitzvas Aseh Pei Gimel again. That's Havos Kol Achiyuvim LeMikdosh VeVesim Shoma. Havos Shoma VeVesim Shoma. There is in the Gimel Golem, you're supposed to bring your Chiyuvim to the Mikdosh. It's a separate Aseh. Okay? Okay. So what does it say? It says like this. He shetzivonu, Pei Gimel, he shetzivonu, lahovi kol kabonos mutalon aleinu, beregel rishon shiif kabono, misholosh regolim, v'chule. Hine kvais boye, she'omroi, the Torah said, omroi, the pasuk says, ve'vesim shoma mitzvas aseh. I guess no, it says ve'vesim for omer. Kvar his boye she'omroi ve'vesim shoma is a mitzvah aseh. Okay, v'hu she'ovi kol ma olov kol ma olov mechukei okel v'yifta mehem b'chol regel. Bein mine korbanos kulam v'domim ve'erchim v'charomim ve'kdeshes. If you said harelai something, you have to bring it in the regel to the mikdash when you go for aliyah the regel. Then it says v'leket v'shikcha ufeya. Yitzios yedei chayvosay me'elu achukim kulam v'regish shempoga boy mitzvah aseh. So the mitzvah aseh to bring the leket shikcha upeya to mikdash v'regel risha. So what case are we talking about? So normally you would have said, it's chametz like hektish, erchin, whatever, or korbanos. You have to bring the korbanos. The only time there's a mitzvah aseh, or we said that tazev means nesina, or laying it down betolush, or be'etzem. Let's ask a different question. The peya is a matana b'mechuba. So how can you talk about being peya in the mikdash? Except maybe the two ilanas of dalias or whatever, that the two ilanas that you give him betolush, because the honor, if he climbs the tree, might kill himself from the heights. That's what we're talking about, peya. So l'chol, we're talking about peya is, in all the cases, we're talking about kind of mitzvah aseh. That's all of. So what does it mean? This Aseh ve'vesim shom, as far as leket shichro peya, is a person who violated the law of loischala, of sichla, or loisalaket. And the mitzvah is for him not to put it down b'makoymoi, but to bring it to Yerushalayim and put it before the aniyim. So it's an amazing thing. The Bevesim Shom, when we're talking about Peah, is the case we violated the law. Okay. Next. We did last week the Aseh of Leket. Okay. And we just said that even if it doesn't say Leket over there in Lavan Aseh, you apply reasoning that since the Oisom applies singularly to Peah, it should apply to everything else in the pasuk. Now, next. Now we get to Shikha. He shetzivonu lohaniach oime hashikha. That I assume you understand, first of all, in Leket, there's no Kriya Shem. In Peah, there's a Kriya Shem. But Leket, there's no Kriya Shem. It falls, just to leave it there for the Oni. And it's a Milson Mamela. In Shikha, there's also no Kriya Shem. You forgot Shochach Doime, Omri, Shochach Doime Basode, Lo Yisoshu L'Kachta. You violated the law. And if you take it, then there's an Aseh, Lageh, La Yosam, V'Lamona Yihiyeh. Hare Omroi, Lageh, La Yosam, V'Lamona Yihiyeh. And the assumption Yihiyeh, it should be in the state. It should be at the disposal of the aniyim. It's not a das makne. It's a memela. It's the moment aniyim. But you should let them avail themselves of this matana. Hu atzibu lo hanichoy v'hu Mitzvas Aseh. Okay. V'hu aseh. Kmo she'amu. Beleket upeya taze v'isom shuhu aseh kmo shebiyanu. Now here, there's something a little. There's something I don't know. It's not 100% kosher, because the logical argument you have in Leket, Peah, and Oilois and Peret, you have a logical argument that the Oisom applies to all of them. Okay? And the Rambam develops this argument in Loisas Areshu Daled. However, in Shikha, you don't have this argument. The Gemara doesn't say that Shikha is a lav and Aseh. We're assuming that since the lav and it says yiyeh afterwards, lagel ayosam lamona yiyeh, that we assume by parallel structure, k'moy omu beleket upeya taze v'isam shuhu aseh. There, we know it's an aseh because we know it's a nitach aseh. The question is under what type of midah, what type of logical argument is this, that since lechet to tazeg, which it says after the lav, since logically you say a lav, is there a rule in the Torah that if you have a lav, shekod malaseh, like he says, maybe he's saying something, shekod malaseh, that by definition, see, I'll show you something here. you look at Shiur Shishi, yeah, it is. He says, Da she'adovo echod yeh boy aseh v'lo yiseh al echod mishlosh ponim. There's three options. There's the lois aseh and the aseh are on the same thing, like Tishbois by Shabbos and a lav of lois aseh kol melacha. Or another option, shia lav shekodmo aseh kagoin oines. The Torah says the lo si'el and then lo suchol l'shalcha. And then he says, shia alav kodim ve'akach yinatek laseh. There'll be a alav, and then the Torah write and aseh. Kagoin omroi lo sikach la'eim al habonim ve'achakach shalech teshalech eso'eim. So you have a lav, and then you have an aseh. So we say that it's a lav and nitul aseh. Here also, in shikha, you have a lav, and you have an aseh. So we should say it's a lav and nitul aseh with the definition of Shiur Shishi, that you have a lav and aseh. Okay. So I would tell you, you need the Meseira of Lav Nitul Aseh by Gzela because the Lav is not written next to the Aseh. And Mehechetesi, how do you know it's Lav Nitul Aseh? Or you can say by Peah you need it because this is Oisam and it's a broad general Lav, general Aseh, and maybe it's not a specific Aseh by Peah. I understand that. But I would tell you that by Shikha you don't need any proof. Because since the Torah says Allah, and this is the Gael, and then you're okay. And that's how the Rambam quotes the Lav and then the Aseh. And he doesn't need, the proof is very simple. You don't have to come on to a discussion, Lav and Nitul Aseh. He doesn't mention it. You don't need it. Okay? Then what does he mean? Upei taze v'isam shehu aseh k'mo shebi'alma. But the taze v'isam over there is only, you know that it's an aseh only because of the Messiah of Lav Nitul Aseh. It's a very odd thing. So the what he's telling you is all you need the Messiah for is that the Oisam is interpreted separately. But once you know it's interpreted separately, you know it's Lav Nitul Aseh because the Torah writes a Lav and then Aseh. And similarly over here, the Torah writes a Lav and then an Aseh, it's Lav, and then you have an Aseh. It's just the proof is a little bit odd because l'cheira, the case of shikha, usually when you have a proof, the proof is simpler than what you're trying to prove. And l'cheira, what's the opposite? What you're trying to prove over here about shikha is much simpler because it's the same category, the same case of shalech t'shalach z'eim v'esabonim tikach lo sikach eim al abonim shalach z'eim tikach. Look, so there's a lav and then an aseh. It's a lav and an aseh. I'm not sure why the Rambam is working so hard to prove something. And what does he see in Peah and Leket and Shikha? In Leket. Okay. Now, next. The Rambam talks here about Shikha Soimer, but Shikha it also was said by Ilonos. And the Rambam says that very clearly in Lois Aseh Reshut Beis. He says, Ki ashoro bi'omo le'sachpoit zeischo lo'isefai achrecho hu shelo yikach hashikcho. Umin azayis teda hadin l'shar Ilonos b'shikcho. So he says that applies to shikras ki ashora bi'omu le'sach bo'itzeischo lo'isafachrecho hu shelo yikach hashikcha u'min hazayis teda hadin l'shari lonis. So means shikcha is not a separate lav by oimer and by ilonis. The Torah says a lav of lo'isafayachrecho by zeisim kisach bo'itzeischo lo'isafachrecho, that it's mashal medin that the lav applies not only to oimer, but also to ilonis. And the Ram says that in Matnas Aniyim also. In Perik Aleph, Halacha Vav, Shem sheshikcha be'oimim, kachi bekomo, im shochach mitzvas hakomo, v'leikotzo ha'izil aniyim. Shem sheshikcha betfuah, Kach shikcha lilonois kulon. Shenema kisach boit zeischa lo yisafach recha v'u adin l'shari lonis. And Minyan HaMitzvos is one lav. So the same way in Minyan HaMitzvos is one lav, and it says Yihiyeh. So even though there's a separate lav of leisach boit zeischa, it's not a separate lav in Minyan HaMitzvos. So the Yihiyeh, which says B'leisach B'zeischa, is also part of the mitzvah of Yihiyeh. Kisach B'zeischa lo'isafach recha lager la'yosam la'mona Yihiyeh. There's another Yihiyeh, but this Yihiyeh, which was said by Zeisim, and this Yihiyeh, which is said by Omer, is one Mitzvas Aseh. However, this a priori is not like Shorish Test, because the Rambam basically says in Shorish Test, you have three lavim of Shikha. You have a lav of Shikha by Oimer, and a lav of Shikha by Zayis, and a lav of Shikha by Anovim. Okay? Which will come to Mitzvah later. And the Ram says all three are one Inyan, even though a different signal, and therefore it's one mitzvah, mitzvah. So the Aseh of Yiyeh, which says by Shikha of Zayis and Shikha of Kerem, is also one Aseh with the Aseh of Yiyeh, which says by Shikha of him. That's the chod you have. So l'cheira, and let's start very simple. So l'cheira, it should come according to this, we'll see this later, that l'cheira, the pasuk, which says by oilois then, is not referring to oilois, but is referring to shikha. We'll have to see about this. Now, this is what you have. So the kitzah is the Rambam in Shorish Cheese says there's three lavim by Shikha, but they're all one Inyan, one by Oimer, one by Elon, and by Kerem, okay? And it's all one lavim Minyan HaMitzvos and all one Aseh Minyan HaMitzvos. And in Minyan HaMitzvos, he basically says, that you have a one I say by Oimer and one I say by Ilonis, and he doesn't talk about the Aseh of Oilos. Oilos is a separate Aseh for something else. We'll go up to Mitzvah to that later. Comes the Ramban and claims he has a different nusach in the Rambam in Reish Yud Beis, or we know as Reish Yud Beis. He says like this, and he writes it not in Reish Yud Beis, he writes it in Hakdama to Protei Mitzvos. He writes like this: V'chein kosav oid b'mitzvos aseh b'mitzvah mitzvos Reish Ches, which is by us Reish Yud Beis, she'omru yis'aleh lo yis'olel shehi hashoa milachalois hakerem b'eis habotzir. Avyonich eshkolos asher biksois biksovois la'aniyim v'uadin l'shari lonas menichpolo hamaniya has mizeh ho'inyan bi'atzmoi b'zeisim shenemo lo yisafah achrecha u'mishneim nilmoi l'kol ilonas. See, that's an amazing thing. And you have to understand the timeline, because what happens is in Sherish Chi, you have 3 lavim of shikha, of shikras omer, shikras eitz or elon, which is zayis, and shikras kerem. But the Ram says they're all one mitzvah. The Ram, what we have by us, is they're 2 lavim, and they're also one mitzvah in Reish Yud Beis. That Zayis and Oimer is 1 lav, and I assume 1 aseh. This nusach in Reish Yud Beis is very troubling, because he basically goes categorically against Sherish Tes. Because the Ram says that Elon and Oimer, Shikha of Elon and Oimer, whatever type of Elon is all one Inyan of Inyan HaTeira. And the different signa doesn't bother us. And what we have in the Ramban, what the Ramban is reflecting, is that Elon and Oimer are 2 separate mitzvahs, the 2 separate lavim. There's a lav of Elon, and there's a lav of Elon, which includes Elon and Kerem, and there's a lav of Oimer. Okay? So let's even accept that the Rambam is going against Sherish Chi, and we'll see, whatever the issue is, he went against it. Okay? The question I only ask you, if you're ready to accept there's a separate lav of Shikras Elon as opposed to Shikras Oimer, shouldn't you logically come to the conclusion that there should be a separate aseh of Shikras Oimer and a separate aseh of Shikras Elon? And this you should have found in Minyan HaMitzvos. We don't find it. You can say, look, I'm going to fix it up later. I don't know. But l'chera, there's an aseh, There are issues. Maybe there are other asehs which were lost or whatever it is. And the Ram's cheshbon, we're showing him the cheshbonis or whatever. But here, there should be another aseh. In Minyan HaMitzvos, there should be Shikras Elon. Okay, so therefore, so what do you have? So you have to say, but I don't know if you can do it. You have to say that when he's talking about oilness over here, he means Shikras Elon, at least in the prior text, and their Azayis was all one mitzvah. I don't know. That's what comes out according to this. But it's a very strange thing. Because l'chera, if you have a separate lav, you should have a separate aseh. And you should have an aseh of shikha, of anovim, and zeisim, and all ilonis. However, that's what you have. Next. That's what he says. שלא ייקח מה ששוכח מן התפור או פרש שיעשבו בזה שני דמיונים, והנובים בזייסם, וכה הנויסה מהנובים אוילויס, וקורא הנויסה מהנובים אוילויס, והנויסה מזייסם פרש, ופירוש לא יספיה, לא יסחתך מה ששכחתו, וכסובויס הפרש והמו הנופים. That is in Shurish test, and in Ramban is lo yisraelu shiazho melchos hakerem beis abotzer v'aniach hashkolos v'chein adin b'shar ilonis v'nichva maniya mizereim v'atzmo b'zeis lo yisafaya. So in the Ramban, there's a separate lav for Ilonis, and L'chayr is separate Aseh. Maybe that's what Oilus is talking about. And in Shurish Tes, all three lavim of Ashikha are referring to Shikha. And we have to understand how you ended up with a lav of Oilus. Okay? But the Ram says only one lav in Shurish Tes. And in Reish Yud Beis, according to the Ramban's Nusach, they're two lav. Okay, now next. Now he says over here also that it's only noig in Eretz Yisrael. He says before, and that's as the Ram says in Aseh Kuf Chaf Aleph, in Kuf Chaf Daled, Zoniach Peret HaKerem, Lefish B'chol Elu. Yeah. Okay, now, excuse me. Here is Matnas Aniyim in Perik Aleph Halacha Yudalet, because he says, Kol Ma'amatonos Aniyim Ein Nogis El Beretz Israel, and one of the Rayas of Eretz Israel, Kisikso Kitzircho B'Sadecho, and that's the beginning of the parasha of Shikha in Omer. So it's clear that it refers to Eretz Israel. Now is the problem. Now comes Oilus, or whatever we're going to call it. Now I just have some ideas, and we'll see how it plays itself out. Kuf Chof Gimel. HaMitzvah Asholosh v'esrim umeya. V'hi shetzivonu lo aniach ma she'ishoye bekerem sheyivso oisoi k'sheyivso, when you do b'tzira, you should be meniach the leftovers to the aniyim. V'hu haniko oilos. If you reread the Ramban, the way he has his nusach in the Rambam, this v'hu haniko oilos wasn't there. Okay, it's a very important line. Vuhu hanika oilos. It's called oilos. Okay. Now, first of all, this lo niach mashi shoye bakerem kapach is a sheriyos hanish olos, and the question is, what is this? The leftovers. But there's no mention over here that he forgot something. Right? It's the leftovers. Correct? So he says like this. So, and at the same time, he says it's oilos. The Ram says he uses oilos as not as a verb, as it says in the Torah, he uses oilos as a noun. And if Hadikla oilos, it's called oilos. So who calls it? Where do we find that it's called oilos? The only place we found a discussion of oilos is in the Mishnah in Perek Zayin Mishnah Dalet. Eza oilos, oileles, kol she'en lo lekotev lo notev. So it's a very strange thing. He's talking about something left over without any description at all. And then he makes a reference to a Mishnah in Perek. Now, I'm bound you understand didn't have this because if it's called oilos, it's not shikha. And the Ram says himself in obey. So I want to tell you the following. Mark Herman told me, published an article, that just as part of it, that this idea of Mashi Shoya Bekere, She'erish Nisheres, is really begins in Ibn Janach. And Ibn Janach, when he refers to it, he says, he refers to Anovim Ktanim that are left over in the Botzer. What does it mean? It means that the Derech B'tzira is not to exhaust the field. It's just not time. It's not time use. It's not time friendly or money friendly, monetary friendly to run after every grape. But the grapes, they usually are left behind in the B'tzira. Those grapes go lanim. That's the pshuto shel mikra. You shouldn't try to scrap them and take every single one. However, there's a pirush makubal of oilos. And that's what the Mishnah says. Eze oleles, kol she'en lo lekotev v'lo notev. And comes the Rambam and says that the pirush makubal and the pshuto shel mikra is not a stira. It's just a hashloma. It gives you a finer understanding of what's happening. Let me just read to Rambam Mishnah Torah and see that he expresses both of them there. Look in Perek Daled of Hilchos Matnas Aniyim, Halacha Yud Zayin. He says like this. And before I say that, I want to tell you, how do I know that the kotev and the notev is a pirush makubal? And that the Rambam was aware of this even when he wrote Sefer HaMitzvos, because you find this in Pirush HaMishnah. The Ram says in Perek Zayin Mishnah Daled, Avobiu Milas Netev for Metatev is Kotev and Notev, what's Lemishu Kedova Shenotev Venigal, Ze al Ze, Ad Shenarem, V'chol Ma She'eno Kach, Hu Ma Shekoro Hashem Oileles. Kol Hashem! It's the Rabbeinu Shalom, it's Torah, it's the Pirush Makubal for Moshe Rabbeinu. So it means on one hand, that the Pshuto Shel Mikra is those things which are darkly to be left over because they're small anovim, and they're not that important to go after. And on the other hand, Hashem kol Hashem oilois oikotev loinotev. So comes the Rambam in Mishnah Torah in Perek Daled Halacha Yud Zayin and says that the Pirush HaMakubal is not Sefer, the Pshuto Shel Mikra, but expands on it and expounds on it. And not expands on it, but expounds on it in a sense that it limits it. And listen to what he says. He says, Ezeu oleles, ze eshkol hakoton, she'ena mu'uva. That sounds very much like Ibn Janach. Then he says, but it's not every eshkol cotton which is ein dalkoi to go after. And he refines it, and he says, Ke eshkol she'ein loy kotef v'ein anovim noisophois zo al zo ele mefuzoros. Comes the Pirush HaMakubal and limits the Pshuto Shel Mikra. What Ibn Janach, what the Rambam is referring to, is over here is Eshkol HaKotten she'eno mu'uve, and it says it's Dafka Rabbi Isai. Dafka, that Eshkol she'en lo kotef ve'en lo notev. So it's very clear to me if the Rambam says Hu Anikol Oilois, he's referring to a Mishnah, and you can't say that the Rambam forgot lefum riyat lefum the nela mimeno a Mishnah, and he said that Mishnah is a Pirush HaMakubal, and he's discussing originally the Pshuto Shel Mikra because they merge together. The Pirush HaMakubal comes to limit the Pshuto Shel Mikra, and this Rabbi Isai is the Aseh of Oilis. Now, this Aseh, the Aseh is those grapes that are small and alak kotev and notev that people wouldn't go after when they do a betzira. So the Chiyah, but the Ram says, Ki sheyivso oisoi. So the Chiyas Aniyim is only b'shas betzira. And the Aseh is only b'shas betzira. And the Lav is only b'shas betzira. However, the Oilos are not shel ba'alim kishenoidu. If you see an eshkol she'en lo kotev ve'en lo notev, it's not shel ba'alim. How do I know that? Because the Ram says in Perek Daled of Hilchos Matnas Aniyim, Halacha Chav Gimel, that if you makdish mishenoida the Oilos, the hektish is not chal. However, Rabbi Isai, the Zchiyas Aniyim is only chal with the betzira, and that the Ram says, and Halacha Chav Beis, that he puts them both together, that at the moment of after Shenoida Oilos until betzira, it's a very strange bailus. It's not shel bailim and it's not shel aniyim. Whose is it? We don't know. The Ram says, Eino aniyim, zeichen likach, peret v'oilois, ad sheyaschel ba'al hakerem. Livso, kalmoi, pifso kalmo, shenever kivso kalmo choleis oilo. V'kalmo yivso yizeichen bohem, shloish eshkoilois, sheinois revia. Hamakdish kalmo ad sheloi noido oilois, Eino oilos laniyim. Because the hektish is chal. They were known. The im mishanoidu oilos laniyim. V'yitnu schar gidulom lahektish. But they only take it after the betzira l'chayr. Now comes the Bahag and does an amazing thing. He has a separate Aseh of shikha. I assume by Omer. He says, oh, this is by kerem. He has like this: shikha upeya bekerem, hefke. Then he says, excuse me, in the Mitzvas Aseh. Then he has shikha upeya betfur, shikha upeya bekerem, shikha upeya betfur, v'shikha beilon. Okay, uperet v'oilos. So how does he have both peret and oilos? And excuse me, how does he have both shikha by kerem and oilos? It's the same thing. Either it's this or it's that. So l'chera here, certainly, whether you accept the Hagah in Shirish Tes or not, there's Hagah there. That the question is, when the Ram there is al yitcha, whether he's referring to the loisa oila, a Pashas Kedoshim, or Pashas Kiseitze, Levaisa, the two loisa oilos. Comes the Bahag and says loisa oil, and Pashas, in Pashas Kiseitze, which is written together with loisa by Sachbeit Zeis, loisa fire, and Shikchas Oimer, the loisa oil and Kiseitze is Shikchas HaKerem. And there's a separate aseh of Shikras HaKerem. And we'll see later there's a separate lav of Shikras HaKerem. There's a separate aseh and lav of Shikras Ilon, which is by Gizei Sechel, or Sefar Achrecho, Lageli Osam Monatiyah. And there's a separate aseh of Shikras of Oimer. However, the Oimer in Parshas Kedoshim, according to the Bahag, are the oilos of Chazal. And that's written together with Shah Matnas Aniyim. But the amazing thing is, and clearly the Rambam, we'll have to talk about the Rapsadiga, maybe different or whatever, but the Rambam clearly is coming and shows Chi against the Bahag, because the Bahag counts the lav, 3 lavim in the Torah. The Bahag has a lav of Loisoshu L'Kachta by Omer, and a lav of Shikha by Zayis, Loisefo Achrecha, and a lav of Kerem, Loisefai Achrecha, Loiseil Achrecha. Okay. 3 separate lavim and 3 separate assays. Comes the Rambam and says, even though it's separate signon of the pasuk, however, it's one inyan atera, all 3 of them are basically shikha. And the Rambam would say that to say the difference shichas tfur and shichas kerem and shichas zayis is preposterous. The only issue is the Rambam is almost coming close to the Bahag in the old nusach of the Ramban, that the Ramban has in the Rambam. There's a separate lav of shikha by Elon and a separate lav of shikha by Omer. Oilos, I'm not going to go into. You have to understand that the issues in the lavim of oilos, but we'll reserve it for the asholos. Now, oilos is only no buried Israel because it's in the parsha. It's in the parsha of Matnas Aniyim by Leket, Peah, and Peret, and it's and that's Daf Eretz Israel. So it means this mitzvah is only noig in Eretz Israel. That's what the kutzcha b'skiratzachem v'eschal pascha b'kso v'leket tzigul lo'isalaked kamach lo'isaola feret kamach lo'isalaked lo nevelageh tazer v'eisal. That's exactly what you'd expect. Boys, have a nice week, and Mitzvah Hashem will pick up next week.